Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of Woke by Accident podcast. Today we have a special guest, Crash Barbosa.
Justice for you and me. Justice for Mike Brown.
No justice, no peace.
After the death that shook the entire country, I decided to step up as a community activist and create a global podcast, Woke by Accident. Here, I amplify compelling news stories and matters impacting African Americans and their communities. My goal is to give a voice to the voiceless and have the difficult conversations needed to advance relations and matters of race. Tune in to Woke by Accident podcast. I am your host, Jen, and it is streaming on all of your favorite streaming platforms, as well as our website, www.wokebyaccident.net. Thank you for listening and take care. Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of Woke by Accident podcast. Today we have a special guest, recording artist, social activist, social media influencer, Crash Barbosa from Los Angeles. We're glad to have Crash back on the show. He was last with us in December of 2021 on episode 73. Check that out. Crash has a very unique voice, and he spends a lot of his time advocating for abolition, mental health, people with disabilities, and speaking out against racism and patriarchy. So I'm very glad to have Crash today. Welcome to the show, Crash.
Hi, how are you? Thanks for having me again.
Yes, doing well. Glad to have you here. So, in light of the shooting which occurred last week, I wanted to discuss this matter with unique voices like Crash to encourage folks to have the conversation so that we can possibly heal from this matter. After the Buffalo shooting, 4 other shootings occurred. There is clearly a message of hatred being spread through actions like these rooted in white supremacy. It is clear that we will not heal from this overnight. But today we will have a conversation about the Buffalo shooting and how social media played a part in these types of matters. So I wanted to give a recap of what occurred with the incident. So this occurred last weekend on May 14th of a mass shooting at the Tops Friendly Market where we lost 11 victims, which were Black. The shooter live streamed the incident on Twitch, and he traveled 3 hours away to Buffalo, and he targeted, the store. Actually, 10 of the victims were Black, and 3 people were injured. So just a very horrible event. We now know that he added individuals to an online chat room before the incident. It seems like social media plays a huge part in incidents like this. I wanted to have you share about that with having such a large social media presence.
Of course. I don't use my platform that way, and it appalls me that anybody's allowed to. The only time I've ever been accused of hate speech by Instagram or Meta, because that's who really falls at blame here, is when I'm being reported for quote unquote hate speech against white cis men. Like, I'm a white cis male, so I don't understand that. I don't even understand how there could be such a thing under the definition of hate speech as hate speech against white cis men. So that happens often. At the same time, we see far-right extremists post death threats on my page. Like, we're coming to California with 50 AR-15s, 50, sovereign citizens, and we're going to fill your communist ass with bullets. Like, but this goes unreported. No one catches this at Instagram's magical algorithm of the far right. And we see a lot of this happen on Clubhouse. We see a lot of this happen on platforms I'm not familiar with, like Discord. I don't really understand Discord, but I understand that its use could be business, and it could be a lot of things, group chat, or unfortunately in this case, it can be where somebody live streams a video of mass violence, a full-blown terrorist attack on United States soil, and it becomes this. So my role, like my opinion on the role of social media in this is it's a very high involvement level, because Section
Mhm.
230 protects these companies from any and all criminal prosecution, any and all
Mm.
things that happen on their site. And that doesn't look to be repealed anytime soon. Big tech has the Democrats and the Republicans in their pocket. And I think we're in dangerous times when things like this are happening because of, according to the family or whatever, who claim to be distraught because of isolation, because people are online and,
Mhm.
things like that. But it gets deeper than that. This kid was pulling financing, planning. I mean, people are talking about this like it was like a lone wolf operation. He was getting
Right.
intelligence from people on social media. He was doing recon of the location. And so, in my opinion, yeah, social media, it definitely can be used to radicalize people, but at the same time, most of us, including and especially myself, I'm speaking into a funnel anytime I speak, and I know that. Like, that's a tunnel of people that agree with me. And so that's what's happening to people like this. And when that happens, they're in far right militia Facebook groups all of a sudden. They really don't know the difference. I'm not sure if they do or don't. But the problem is this kid ends up getting into rooms with people who have a lot of interest in what he's doing. They encourage the violence. They help plan the violence. They continue his acts of violence. That's not really a lone wolf attack. That's very coordinated. And the only reason they're saying it isn't is because it's a white kid.
Right, definitely. Um, that you mentioned that the social media entity is protected. And so, like when this goes to trial, they won't have any responsibility. Is that right?
Correct. They will, however, willingly release, all the data to law enforcement
Okay.
because they all have contracts with law enforcement. I've had entire discovery packets with alleged comments I made on social media, and I'm like, is this a real trial? Or like, is
Oh,
this real right
wow.
now? Like, district attorney, and like it's happened before, and it was very minuscule things, and that was their whole discovery packet. So these companies, they'll sell your information to anybody, from advertising companies to law enforcement to foreign governments that want to attract U.S. citizens. And so once we're down that road, like, do the companies get held liable? Absolutely not. But are they involved in the process in some way? Yeah, because they do release their internal logs and everything to law enforcement. So it's an interesting way to, have your cake and eat it too. If you're a big tech company protected under Section 230, which I've never seen so many protections for anything in my life than tech companies.
Right, but it just seems interesting that he reached out for this audience, if you will, before he goes and commits this act. Making sure that he has the audience. You know what I mean? Is that what it is to have that engagement, or?
I'm not sure because of the way he did his live stream or whatever. From what I understand, it, happened. The live streams were posted live, but to what, 10 people or so within his
Hmm.
Discord group. And then they were reshared by other far right people within
Okay.
that community and separations of degrees of those people on other social media platforms. And they're still being shared. And so to me, I'm not sure, to be honest, if this kid thought he would be getting attention or like clicks, or if he was told by somebody else that this was an American thing to do and he needed to do it. These far right groups, they're very good with indoctrination. They operate on very strange like ways of getting isolation. Like they really exploit isolation, where they'll try. I've been tracking these groups for a while, and they'll try to turn people to their side. They'll really like isolate and get you into the funnel of their ideology, and they'll really encourage this kind of behavior. They'll realistically have military members or ex-military members inside of these groups, offering firearms training and things like that, where it like kind of gives a young kid a notion where they think they're doing something patriotic. And
Yeah.
here I'm not sure, only because of the mental state of the perpetrator here. I really don't know where his head was at. I mean, we're talking about a kid that's wearing a hazmat suit to the hospital.
Yeah.
So like it seems like he had a lot of conflicting political ideologies. It's a strange manifesto. I read it. I think the worst thing on it is the 14 words, and no one's talking about the 14 words.
Because it was 180 pages, right? You said there were 14 words in particular that were striking.
No, just the 14 words are like, he had also as well on his rifle, he had 14 on it. And the 14 words
Oh,
are about, protecting white children. And it's basically a mantra that's been repeated for
yeah, that
a long time.
acronym, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, pretty much. 14 words are basically like what you say to be a validated, like, white supremacist. So, like, he had
Mm,
14 painted on the gun. He had "Here's your reparations" painted on the gun. Like, this is an absurd
I
purge scene
saw
where it's
that.
like he really had a costume, like as if this was. I mean, this wasn't a costume though. It's important to note these were military fatigues. This was military equipment. It looked like a Marine Corps flag vest that he was wearing. No one's talking about that.
Hmm.
He was wearing digi camo. That's not easy to come by if you don't have friends in the military. I mean, not a lot of it doesn't check
Mm,
out. He showed up looking like he was a frontline soldier. He even had their helmets. I don't know where he acquired all of this. I've been to the
right.
Army surplus store. I never saw that on sale. So
Yeah, definitely. That kind of brings me to my next question about a missed opportunity. We're seeing reports now that he had was taken into custody when underwent a psychic evaluation during his senior year for making a possible threat in an online class chat about, I think he referenced a violent attack in the chat, and but there were no charges filed, and so could that have possibly prevented this matter? What do you think
more
about
than
that?
more than just prevented. I mean, he really said that what he said was very directly that he was going to use a gun to shoot his school up, and he was planning to do it at homecoming, graduation, or sometime after that. So he didn't really just make a kind of obscure threat at school. He
Hmm.
very literally out loud said he was planning a mass school shooting, said he wanted it to be at a large and crowded event, and if he didn't do it at one of the two crowded events coming up, he would just do it very soon. And instead of dealing with this, there wasn't really an arrest report on this. I don't think he may have spent time in a psych ward. I wouldn't have access to his medical files, obviously, but
Right.
it seems like this is something nobody was paying attention to. And I think the blame should fall obviously on parents more when these things happen, because where are these kids getting these beliefs, right? So I
Yes.
think that's an important thing to know. It's like his parents were complicit, in my opinion, because why does an 18-year-old have access to all of that? And that's what's confusing to me. It's like if he's having hardline beliefs like that, there's no way that hasn't come up at the dinner table. And I mean, it's already come up in police records. So yeah, we missed an opportunity there to be able to heal somebody who's clearly not healed, like definitely doing terrorist acts. But this is definitely also a sick person. I'm not trying to make an excuse for the kid, but as
Hmm.
far as harm prevention goes, like I'm just making a case for harm prevention. This definitely could have been prevented. This was something that there's police reports on that he did that, and
Right.
the police in Buffalo acted like this was new to them 2 days after the incident. To me, I just don't see that ever happening if this wasn't a white kid who did it. Once again, it's like they're like, we don't know who he is. He had a 180-page manifesto online. I just, something tells me if he was black, they would have found that manifesto immediately and blamed Black Lives Matter for coordinating attacks. That would have happened immediately. But we're hearing lone wolf and a lot of apologetic terms from the media, and it's just not good.
Right. So you mentioned that, like, had this been a black kid, it would have been a different story. So that speaks to clearly the white privilege. Is that right?
Correct. It does. I mean, the way he was taken into custody, especially, it's
Yes.
unreal to me. He threatened to kill himself, and the cops did everything they could to make sure that he didn't pull the trigger when he
Yes.
pointed the gun at his neck. They were like, "Oh no, we're not going to let this white kid die on our watch." Like, the victims didn't exist anymore. The hostages that may have existed in their minds, it was secure the white kid and get him in a cop car as politely as possible. And to me, that is I don't even understand that, and I'm white. Like I'm missing teeth from police beatings and shit. You know, so and I didn't have a
Yeah.
gun that day. So it's like I don't understand where they come with. Hey, like we see this guy in body armor. He already shot one of our own. Like he shot a dude. The only white people, for the record, that got hit in this were people that attacked. He wasn't looking for white victims in this. He was walking right past white people in the store,
Yes.
and if you opened fire on him, you got shot. That happened to two white people, but as far as what he was there for, it was very clearly a motivated, like this was a terrorist attack. He
Yeah.
was looking up zip codes. We now have evidence of what he was doing with in regards to going after tops, that very specific tops, because it was in
Hmm.
a very food desert area and he wanted to really get at infrastructure that was
Okay.
aiding what he calls, pariahs and people trying to take, his place in society, which is a form of replacement theory. I've been hearing that a lot.
Yes.
I think this kid was on something deeper than that, but that's just how I view it.
Yeah, talk about that replacement theory. There's been a lot of talk about that. What can you share about that theory that, you know,
I mean,
immigrants and blacks are going to take over, you know?
I've heard it my whole life, and it blows my mind every time I do. I mean, to be realistic, there's no white people in America who aren't immigrants themselves. Not that many generations ago, so it's always interesting to me to hear about. We can't let them take this. Like people were saying that about most people who got off the last person off the boat, right? So it's like that happened, and now you're seeing people talk about replacement as if like America is a land of just white people and picket fences without bringing up redlining, without bringing up the 13th Amendment or slavery and all of that. So to me, replacement theory is just a strange right wing ideology, very similar to red pill, where it's like it's just hate speech. That's all it
Yeah.
is. Like these people are fragile to the point where they're worried. This is at a human level. They're worried that somebody who's more qualified them will be able to take their job. That's really what it is. That's how I see it. That's how I've always heard that narrative, even from neoliberals when they're kind of, just dog whistling that narrative. It's
Hmm.
usually like, but what are we going to do as white people if everybody else could, that's not what they're really saying, but that's what I hear.
Yeah, it's just really, just, gosh, this is really disheartening, this whole matter, even the response. I sent you a link about these racist jokes about some correctional officer posting, some really racially insensitive joke about the matter. You would think that people would be coming together and appalled about this horrible shooting and the deaths of these innocent people, children even, and then to see that someone in the law enforcement, that's a form of law enforcement, would make some joke about a cleanup on aisle 3 or whatever it is in that type of manner. And I see that people have been rallying to try to get that person fired. Um, from a social media standpoint, do you think that when people try to get these, outing these people or putting them on blast, I think that that's good. What do you think about people that make those type of posts and when people put them on blast and try to get them fired?
As an abolitionist, I don't believe in punitive
Okay.
accountability. So cancel culture is a hard no for me.
Okay.
But however, this is a unique case where this man, like you said, is working in a prison, right? So he's a correctional officer, where, as we know, 80% or more of the people he's interacting with and supposed to be quote unquote protecting and giving meals to aren't white people. If he thinks it's funny to go post a picture of a store where that just happened and make a joke about it, I don't think he should be around the population that was just targeted. That's, to me, like, that's a time when somebody should lose their job. That would be like, a teacher molesting a child, in my opinion, and then getting their job back. Like,
Mhm.
this shouldn't be acceptable. To me, it shouldn't be a conversation that anybody even has to have on social media. This should have been handled internally. It's kind of sloppy on the end of the state to not make sure they dusted this off before it got out into the public, because it really would just gave another cause, right, to the far left. Like, I'm surprised they didn't try to bow tie that, because that's how the DOJ typically works on things like that. And I'm really just I'm shocked by the response. I'm shocked by
Mhm.
how quick Joe Biden got there. Joe Biden hasn't been anywhere quick this whole presidency.
Yeah.
He takes weeks to get anywhere, right? Like, he sends Pelosi on diplomatic missions, which she's unqualified for now, and it's like this dude was
Well,
there within a day.
and we're still kind of waiting for him to, take some action. I mean, he made a speech, and that's great and all, but have we seen some legislation, be written? Not yet. So, do we think he will write it? That's a question that we have.
Yeah, but
Because
he's gonna go after 2A rights, and I think they're gonna be very racist, like 2A rights, where it's like white people have guns, black people have less guns than before. Somehow, I don't even know how you can possibly work it out that way. But Biden will figure it out with Mayor Adams in the room. Like they'll come to a consensus on how they can stop non-white, non-rich citizens from legally owning firearms in the United States. That will definitely happen because that's the bill he's even talking about writing.
okay,
I thought his rhetoric was weak. He came out and said it was a white supremacy based hate attack or mass violence, something like that, where I was like, why didn't you just call him a terrorist? Like you separated terrorism and white supremacy, and that to me just seems intentional.
mm, hmm
That's what I didn't love about Biden's statement. I mean, I didn't love a lot of it, but that was where the most tone deaf part was to me was
So we possibly could see him writing a bill from this. I think that's what people are suggesting would be a proper, or su- suggested response to this, similar to the anti-Asian hate bill that he wrote. A little swifter, perhaps, when we saw those types of actions being done against the Asian community.
he wrote that real fast, right? Like, I mean,
Hmm.
that happened fast. I don't, there wasn't marches, there was nothing like that. That just happened. And to me, that is, again, anti blackness just being perpetuated throughout the government at the deepest levels. Like, not to pick and choose, but like, we really need to take a look at that. To me, that's a declaration of this is what we do. Like to me, that was almost an arrogant move by the government to be like, not only did we break our campaign promises to black people who elected us as the Democrats again, but we
Hmm.
also decided that we were gonna, ban hate crimes against Asian people who really were lobbying that hard for that to happen. Compared to BLM for 2 years, everyone's getting tear gassed and everything by their local
Hmm.
police department, the friendly little military force, and it's just unreal to me. It's like, what was the intention in doing that? Was that just to put people, quote unquote, in their place as the Dixiecrat agenda? Like that's how,
Hmm.
to me, that's how it came off. Was it's another thing like the Alameda line in LA in the '90s, where they're out there with the megaphone telling people if they cross that line after dark, it's open season. Coming from
Yeah.
law enforcement, it's a dog whistle. I don't like dog whistles to white supremacy, especially when they come from, the legislative branch of our government.
So I want to ask you, because you are a proponent of abolition, what would be the proper response to, this suspect, that committed this act, if not, prison or what have you? I mean,
This is a hard one to answer that on it. I'm glad you asked me to, because I mean,
yeah.
there's ways to do it. I mean, there could be a community accountability thing here.
Okay.
I haven't spoken with any of the victims personally. I don't know, I mean, the families of the victims. I don't know what they want here. I don't know if they want him in prison. I don't know if they want him in counseling. I don't know if they want him executed. I don't think that can happen to him in New York anymore. But like
Hmm.
I don't know what they want, and what they want matters. What he wants right now doesn't matter. He should have gotten treatment. In an abolitionist society, things could have never went this far, especially because the threat had already been made, like to use an AR-15 style rifle at his school, and no one really cared about that. And then, like within a year, he's back at it, planning and reconning, like 2-day recon trips. Like he's driving 200 miles to recon this place, as if he's attacking like an armed stronghold. And like, yeah, so that's just very much where I'm sitting with it, where like I'm just appalled. Like I'm appalled at the way it's being handled by every branch of government. I'm appalled that he's being held in AdSec. Like what are they going to do, give him a trust? Like to me, as an as an abolitionist, this just should have been averted. This could have been protected by community. I believe
Okay.
firmly that if police were not the main authority in Buffalo, and that if everybody in Buffalo happened to be armed that day, he wouldn't have had such a successful day out at the massacre purging. You know what I mean? Like I just don't see him doing it that way. And
Hmm.
that's an argument to be made as well. I don't know what the families of the victims want in this case. I don't think prison will help him. I don't think it will help make anything better. I also
Mhm.
think there needs to be accountability. I wish that there didn't need to be punitive accountability, but in this case, it's unique. This is a hate crime. He already did something that was very punitive and, I mean, genocidal. Let's be real, genocidal. This is like a prelude to small scale civil war skirmishes. I feel like, right? It keeps
Mhm.
happening and all of that, and so I'm just in a space where I'm trying to watch this develop and figure out how to handle this as an abolitionist, because it kind of keeps happening. So it's like this case is
Yeah.
going to end up being pushed back over and over. It's going to end up in a courtroom, and um, yeah, I what do I think the punishment should be, or what do I think the consequence should be? I mean, I'm not a judge. I
Yeah.
think that he should. If you ask me personally, I think he should get hung, strung up, like from a balcony, straight up. Like that's like what should happen. Like if he wants to do hate crimes, like he should get treated like he committed treason, which is kind of what he did. Like he should be treated like a terrorist. He did a
Mhm.
terrorist act, and that's how I look at it. Like this isn't even local. This shouldn't even be a local police issue. This should be like the feds and the military in town, like putting him through a court martial, and like that's a hardline stance. But what he did was hardline shit. So it's just, to
Yeah.
me, yeah, I'm the wrong person to ask, because I think, you know, there's a lot of people who have a big problem with this, including myself. Like, I don't want to see this kid get off, and I also don't want to really see him in prison. I wish there was a better display of accountability that could be almost used as like a warning for other white supremacists to no longer do this. The state has no problem doing this to other people. So what we're really trying to do is build something better than the state. But when we have to think from a punitive mindset and we already know the courts are involved, it's difficult to have that conversation, because how is the court going to hold somebody accountable? The courts don't even hold themselves accountable. They don't really talk to the victims. They badger a lot of witnesses. They put people through trauma to get their quote unquote justice with
Mhm.
regularity, and they make evidence. Like, so to me, like, anytime we're calling for incarceration as abolitionists, we're on a slippery slope, because people look at it like they only want to lock up their enemies, right? And that's not true. No one wants to lock up anybody. But I do see a lot of abolitionists celebrate, when verdicts come in on things like this, and I always find that very strange, because yeah, it's like fuck, like those people. I'm sorry, I did abuse the cuss, but it's like those people, they're terrible, right? And
Yeah.
they need to be dealt with, but not. If we're saying nobody should be in cages, that really does mean nobody. And those answers are way beyond what I would be able to answer, because I'm not part of that community in Buffalo. I'm not personally involved with the incident whatsoever. So
Yeah.
I can't really answer to that. But that's all I could say is prisons don't make anybody safer. But
Mhm. You mentioned they would celebrate. They would celebrate when the person like does not have to face jail time. Just to clarify, is
oh, no. I said like the one of the scariest things I see is like when I'll see like an abolitionist like actually like post like a video of their reaction to a verdict when it's a guilty verdict. And like if it was like
yeah.
somebody who committed a hate crime, it's a party. They're popping a cork of champagne off and everything. And it's like,
Okay. Okay.
abolition? You know what I mean? Like wait a minute, I
Yeah.
thought
Yeah.
nobody should be in a cage. And it's like right now the whole system that we dismiss as a legitimate entity, like the courts all the way down. Like you just read like a rigged juror pool read a guilty verdict off, and I don't think that's a cause for celebration, no matter who it is. I think
Okay.
like there's better ways of dealing with it, including firing squads. I'm not kidding when I say that. Like, it's like, why even have him in a prison if he's going to be there forever? He's not going to
Mhm.
heal. He's going to create more harm in there. He's probably going to live well on a GoFundMe from the far right in there. Like,
Mhm. Mhm.
it's like, to me, we're talking about firing squads or not firing squads at that point, but like prison in this, I don't understand that. I don't understand why the courts really are that involved either. Like this shouldn't have been a local law enforcement response. Like I
Yeah.
said, like this on paper, textbook wise, like they're calling it a terrorist attack. To a degree, it is one. It's like
It
that.
is.
This should have been responded to by feds. This should have been handled differently if we were going to do it the American way or whatever. So to me, yeah, the DOJ is, they're absent on this. I haven't even heard a statement from the DOJ. That's interesting too. Like the Department of Justice is usually breathing down the neck of every local police department they can to make Biden look, progressive. And they didn't do that this time. And so that's interesting to me that I haven't even seen the
It
DOJ put a statement
is.
out.
It's completely being handled on the local side when clearly the type of attack that this, clearly seems, like you said, like a federal matter. You wonder if they will, switch it over at some point, or will they get involved once they kind of dig in? More things are being uncovered. And we see new articles with different details being shared about like this matter during his senior year of school. School, he was able to march in the senior parade after all of that. You know what I mean? So it seems like he was being protected, in some kind of way, which is really interesting.
Yeah,
So.
it's scary. It's scary, I think. It should be
Mhm.
scary to everybody because this isn't the only one. Like, then there were 4 attacks, right? In not as many days on US soil, doing with the same motivations. And
Yes.
to say that these are not coordinated attacks is reckless on the government's behalf. And like I said, like if this was, a black person or maybe even just an abolitionist who did something like this and there were mostly white victims, they would have been like, you see what they're up to now. They're strapped. They're ready for civil war. We need to get drones on U.S. soil and amend the Constitution to use them. Like that's what they should be doing with this. If they think the greatest threat, and this is the DOJ's actual stance on, far right extremists, they think it's the greatest threat to America, like on any level, like from overseas threats, everything. Like they claim that the biggest threat to America is far right wing, white supremacist militia groups on U.S. soil. So they're not treating it like that. Like you see ISIS getting entire civilian populations wiped out, 0 actual targets hit, that like quote unquote targets that the military wanted, the state wanted to hit. And so like why they're not doing this in, Alabama. They're not doing this like the preschools of the, grand masters of like the Klan Lodge. And that's interesting to me, because
Mm.
if they really believe that's such a threat, they should really be looking into these people more. Like a lot of these people are pretty transparent with their beliefs. They're online spreading hate speech, getting kids like this to go and commit acts of literal genocide on US soil, and it's being okie dokie essentially. They're treating this as if it was just, mentally disturbed kid walked in, 10 people died. They're really not wording it like he went in with the intention to do this. And it to me is very dangerous that they're centering mental illness and they're even centering COVID isolation as a
I
main
saw
issue.
that. What is up
That
with
it's
that? Yeah.
mind blowing.
Hmm.
It's mind blowing. Yeah, I mean I don't know what's up with it, but it seems like a right wing agenda. It's like it seems like
Yeah.
QAnon and everybody had a baby. You know what I mean? Like, which is interesting. The right is anti baby right now, but it's like it seems like they all had a baby right now. Like it's like all these strange groups are getting a narrative out there, and they're definitely collaborating on it. I wouldn't be surprised if Fox News was directly involved because of the fact that in his manifesto he also claims to hate Fox News. So when people blame Tucker
Mm.
Carlson, it's interesting. The kid has a lot of conflicting and sick beliefs, but definitely beliefs of white supremacy. Like the 14
Yeah.
words are some of the worst words that were ever put in sequence and normalized
Hmm.
in English, in my opinion. And this kid's I don't even know how an 18-year-old would know those words. That's what's even wild, because it's like people really haven't heard of that in a while. It's like I talked to my buddy who's a lawyer about it, like, and he was just like, dude, I haven't even heard of that since like high school. I'm like, right? Like I had to like literally think what that was, and then like, you know what I mean? So like that's scary that we're living in 2 separate Americas like that, where it's like as someone who's been incarcerated like myself, like I forgot that that was even a thing type of thing. And then
Mm.
like I right now couldn't recite the 14 words. I know it has to do with, protecting white children and like white land in America, but like I can't recite it. I don't know it off the top of my head. I never wanted to learn that. And so it's but it's dangerous. It's a dangerous sequence of words. It's used in variated terms by politicians all the time and law enforcement in full. So to me, yeah, the 14 words should be the focus here. I don't see the media touching that, and that's super strange to me that they won't touch that. And I don't know if that they're concerned about CR, like, critical race theory curriculum being like in harm's way if they were to move on that, but like that would be the most democratic excuse I've ever heard if that's really what their strategy is. And I can't imagine anything else being why the media won't directly point at what happened and why, because they won't. They're really saying this happened, that happened, that happened. but they're not tying it together with a nexus, which is weird because that's what the media loves to do. They love to do trial by media. You know, they love to be the
Yes.
judge, jury, and executioner. So it's weird seeing them all of a sudden take this very unbiased stance. And I'm
Yeah, some
appalled by
of
it.
them are not even saying his name, which I find that interesting. But a lot of times, like you said, they want to try it out in media, really kind of ruining or harming the case because some of those things don't need to be shared until the trial happens, depending on what the matter is. But they just want to get it out, because they want to be the first one to share whatever information. And then when the trial happens, you wonder if that harmed the case in getting justice for the families and things like that.
Agreed. And to me, they're already indicting the families. That's what's sad. It's like if you see the media, they're really going to these people's houses like the vultures they are. And they're trying
Yeah.
to get statements from all the victims. And these people like really lost loved ones. This kid targeted, let's be very clear about this. Like a lot of senior citizens, like he was walking up to
Yes.
very, defenseless people, like disabled people, like for sure, at just, point blank ranging. So it's like everybody lost a mother, everybody lost like a father, uncle, things like that. It's like they're going to homes that are in mourning and they're trying to get answers. Like, what do you think like started this? What do you think the motive was? Like, why would you even ask them that? But like what they are doing a good job of is getting, how hurt the victims and the families of the victims are
Yeah.
and putting that narrative out into the public view. But there's a dual narrative there. Like there's a lot of arguments that can be made that the jury pool will be tainted because of the media coverage, because they
Mhm.
never thought he didn't do it. I don't think that will work, but a good
Okay.
defense attorney will have everybody on the edge of their seat when the verdict comes in. That they even did with Kyle Rittenhouse. People weren't sure what the verdict would be, and for that very same reason.
Yeah.
So I do think the media is dangerous when they intentionally leak, information that's supposed to happen in a closed courtroom with 12 jurors. They're leaking it to the entire American public, who will then go on to influence those 12 jurors who remain anonymous, but definitely tell their family and friends that they're jurors on that case. And they're like, oh, did you read this in the New York Times? Did you see how the family? And like, they should be hearing like from the prosecution about that, not from their
Yeah.
neighbors and their friends. And so that's what it gets. Like, I'm always big on community discourse, but if we're going to legitimize the court system and have that in play, there shouldn't be community discourse affecting an outcome inside of a courtroom where a jury has to make a decision. Like that's like legalized jury intimidation, very literally.
Yeah, for sure. So, as we kind of wrap it up, we kind of talked about what Biden's potential response may be as a solution. Maybe some legislation will come out of this. What other solutions? Possibly, some gun law changes. There was something I saw about the way he acquired one of the guns that
Yeah.
wasn't
I don't think anyone's sure how he got the shotgun. The
okay.
first his main, like, his AR-15, the Bush, like that thing was bought by him, and that's very absurd. But that he purchased, that was in his name. Everything else, as far as I know, was purchased by him in his name, except for the shotgun that he had. And I don't think they have found out where he got that yet. I don't think they'll have to
Okay.
look very hard. I mean, shotguns don't really run like ballistics and everything the same way. They're kind of a little bit less traceable because they're a defense weapon. They're usually kept in homes, like they're rarely used for mass shootings. So I kind of think that that's why they're having a hard time locating that too. Like for all we know, this was a 1950 shotgun that he painted and sawed off, and they can't identify the make model. But they're being lazy
Mm.
with it, and that may be the one time they're not releasing too much information, because they might have actually found a far right militia group that gave it to him, and they're doing a little, ATF raid soon. But I doubt it. They're not going to Waco, Texas anybody over it. And like I think Biden's going to write legislation that's gun control legislation. I don't think he's going to mention anything about the protections
Oh,
of
the hate.
vulnerable populations. He's just not going to
Oh,
do that. But he'll use that though to pass harsher gun laws, which is
mm,
contradictory to what happened. It's like harsher gun laws killed people here. It's like a kid who
mhm.
had access to firearms financial access, whiteness access, knows cops probably in his hometown with parents who are giving this a safe haven type of access. And then he goes to a place where he knows people are going to be unarmed 9 out of 10 times, probably 10 out of 10, and starts opening fire. That's predatory behavior. And so I think they're going to go at the gun thing. They already have been talking about, federal 10-round magazine limits. And is that going to stop anybody like this kid from committing acts of violence with more than 10 rounds in a clip? Absolutely not. But it's going to stop law-abiding citizens from defending themselves.
Okay, so then they potentially.
That's where I think he's going to go with it. Do I wish that was different? 100%. But the solution would be to really pass hardline legislation protecting Black Americans at this point. Where it's very late in the we're at 11:59, on the clock until doomsday, where it's like America is just fully racist and at the point of no return. It's already there, but we're at the point where it's like no one's ever gonna care. It's like 11:59, and Biden's just looking at that clock and thinking gun control.
Right.
And it's like, how many years have you all been doing this? Like, as the Democrats, you all wait till the 11th hour every time. As the Democrats, you sit there and you think, what's the bare minimum that we can get away with, making it look like we care about victims, we care about people who are oppressed by our country, and yet still restrict their freedoms using something traumatic or violent as an excuse. That we've seen enough of. To me, that's the same weak legislation with unintended consequences that the 94 crime bill had written all up in it. You know what I mean? Where a lot of people supported that bill because they thought, crack was seriously a threat to the communities, and it was. But then once all of a sudden they start getting teenagers for possession of powdered cocaine, and they're charging crack cocaine versus powder cocaine based on what your ethnicity is, that's when it became a slippery slope. And it was always a slippery slope to go tough on crime, but that's next level. So I think whatever Biden does on a federal level, sadly, will be something to this. Do I think there will be a discussion about this in a House or a Senate floor? Maybe. I think someone will present legislation. I don't think it will get passed. Unfortunately, I think the GOP looks at race as a issue that they're protecting as a party now. I think Democrats are looking at race as something that they have to care about, which is very toxic because they should just care about it without needing to. And I don't see a functioning government in America right now, and that's the reality. I wish I did, but I don't. So to me, the solutions would be for community to be more involved than ever with protecting their communities, making sure that they don't see any weirdo show up with an AR-15. I think the solutions we have here are to try to replace the systems we have in place that clearly didn't work here. There was no one that flagged this. The police showed up as per usual as a responsive force, saving no lives except for the assailant's life, right? So that to me right there, and then the kid goes to a nice little segregated part of jail where he's on suicide watch. We don't even know. I don't think he's been arraigned yet. He might even be bail eligible. I can almost guarantee you they'll allow this kid to post bond. So that's where I can't, I'm not going to predict that. I'm not the judge on the case. I don't even know who is, but do I think he's going to have a cheap attorney? No. Do I think his attorney is going to ask for bond? Yeah. Do I think a judge will grant it? Yeah, it might be $5 million, but I think a judge is going to grant bond if he agrees to an ankle monitor. And they might not even make him do that. And that's, when has that happened to someone who was even jaywalking who wasn't white? Never.
Yeah.
So we're really talking about the most deep-rooted and systematic, points of racism, conflicting right now. This is almost like reverse intersectionality, where it's we're seeing all the institutional racism intersect in one 24-hour angst-driven news clip that at first the news was playing 9/11, right? 24-hour news, and then they kind of just made it go away. All you hear about is Ukraine for the last 4 days, and that's interesting to see as well, because both of those are very white-centered agendas that have no, those agendas exist to promote anti-blackness. Like I said, people are mainlining white supremacy it's dope. They just are, and it's. I don't know what's more scary to me is that that's not clear to people, or if it's that people are happy to do that because everybody else is doing it and it doesn't seem strange. Like, that's not how we can live as a society. No society can survive in a world like that. So that's where I'm at with it. The solutions would be for community to come in and to fix and talk to people, but mostly talk to people. Like, conversations fixed a lot more than people think. If court hearings were more conversational, they'd be a lot more clear.
Hmm.
If you couldn't object, like, to me, I don't want to go down a rabbit hole, but it's like the whole court system is absurd to be like, you can object, they can sustain it, they can say strike that from the record, they can instruct the jury all they want, to never,
Yeah, then the judge can come
disregard the whole
in.
statement.
Yeah,
But it's
yeah,
like they can't unhear that, right? It's like you
right.
can't. What jury's like, yeah, for sure, Your Honor. Well, we're deliberating. We'll definitely forget about the facts we just heard 20 minutes of that you struck from our record. Like, that doesn't happen. You can't unhear something, especially if you're in a jury pool. So to me, like, there's no legitimacy to our court system either. And yeah,
Mhm.
I'm going down the rabbit hole of solutions right now, because the solution really is to have an opportunity for people to have a dialogue and heal and ask them for what they want, not the DA, not Joe Biden, not Nancy Pelosi. Not,
Mm.
I'm sure they'll somehow give the president of Ukraine a say in this. He shouldn't have a say in this. No, like, no one should have a say in this besides people who are affected by it and people
Yeah,
who want to solve things. That's the solution.
that's true. So I'm glad that you were willing to have a conversation about it. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this trial goes. It really will be interesting to see. So appreciate your time and you coming on the show again. It was good to see you again. Anything coming up for you? I know you have some really great rooms on the Clubhouse with great discussions and music, and anything coming up for you.
Yeah, I have a lot of new music coming out in the next few months, a music video as well. I'm doing a lot of legislative work right now, so I've been, like, bogged down by that. I've been working with a couple of people trying to build more solution-based stuff, to be honest. Like, speaking of solutions, I'm trying to, do a lot of educational things, work with middle schoolers, like, teach them how to work on legislation, how to write legislation. I'm trying to deal with middle schoolers to high schoolers and teach them about anti-racism and patriarchy, and, like, kind of nip these things before they get to the, rape culture in every college dorm in America. Like, I think we could start getting rid of that now. And that's something I've been super focused on. I've been talking to a lot of people about different projects around that. And that's far away from my lane, I guess, as a musician. But is it? It's
Mhm.
like, no, like, kids think I'm cool, I'm going to do that. I'm more legitimate to a kid than their teacher is, which is, again, a sad state of affairs. Like, we need to
Yeah.
invest in education and not militarize police. Yeah.
Good. I'm glad to hear that you're working with kids and doing that. That's awesome. Any, I guess, can people reach out to you from your Instagram, or how can people reach out to you?
Of course, I'm at Crash Barbosa and everything. Like, all my platforms are just Crash Barbosa, like, with that symbol. So yeah, people can find me on Instagram. They
All
can
right.
see my wild story post. My Twitter's kind of dead. But yeah, people can see me just all over the place. And I'm looking forward to putting more content out. I always look forward to discussions like this. I appreciate you having me back. It's great seeing you again.
Yeah,
And, like, yeah,
definitely.
I'm super hyped. I'm
Okay,
super
cool.
hyped.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
I'm
So
super, yeah, I'm super
yeah.
appalled by this. And I think that,
Yeah.
like, we need to protect our communities. I mean, I really think that. I think that would be the most immediate solution, is for communities to have a discussion about what to do if there is a situation like this where law enforcement either can't or will not protect them, and somebody comes from over 200 miles away to commit a genocidal act on US soil. Like, I think there should be discussions around how to screen for that, and I don't mean, like, promote surveillance, and I do not mean the police being involved. I mean, like,
Mhm.
this is something that people could fix if they're in solidarity and working on community-based solutions. And this is, people can protect themselves too, and should.
That's
And
true.
I advocate for the government. I honestly call out the government regularly and demand that they need to be firearms to women, especially black women, and black people, so that to even the 2A thing, like if the Second Amendment's not going anywhere, it can't just be white people who are armed legally. That's just not
Yeah.
okay. Like there needs to be more firearms training courses for people who are more vulnerable than, say, a kid who has time to go do recon and drive 200 miles back and forth, and then put a full-blown, costume from war on and go into a supermarket and treat it like he's at D-Day, except he's, also at like this kid went in and tried to play executioner. It's just, that's not okay. Like there's so much intent here that it's like, you can't say it was an accident. You can't say it was like just a mental health thing, because it was too well planned to be a mental health thing. Like it's not like the kid just snapped. The kid did recon. He slept on it more than once. He hid his rifle the day before. I just found that out. Like that came out. Yeah. Like I don't even think his parents had a problem with it. So he must have thought like maybe he was getting too much attention online or something and didn't want to get his like plans ruined. And so I just really wanted to highlight like that law enforcement failed to act here like they always do in ways that should be unconscionable. It's like I'm surprised they took him alive. They should, like, the PR move there would have been to make it look like they shoot white people too, especially if they're doing genocides. But that's not what they did. They prevented him from shooting himself. I can't imagine them doing that if that was literally anybody else.
Right. That's true. And like you mentioned there, community is really important. We do need to, protect ourselves as a community. There's a way that we can, protect each other, and we need to do more of that. So, yeah, for sure. Okay, well, thank you guys for listening, and thank you again for Crash being on the show. Welcome here
Thank you so much.
anytime.
Thank you, Jen. I always love coming through.
For sure. So thank you guys for listening, and take care.
Take care.